Senator Roy Blunt joining us this morning. Good morning, Senator.
Hey, good morning. Good to be with you guys.
We're glad to have you on the program as well.
Are there two of you there this morning? I said you guys, but I've only heard one voice. So
there is indeed two of us, Senator. It's great to have you on the program. I know you've had just a busy week. A lot of things have been going on, and certainly one big concern, at least in our neck of the woods here in Joplin, has been FEMA funding, and you've been pretty vocal on that issue.
Well, I have, and what we need to do is be sure that the federal government is able to do what communities count on it to do when communities can't deal with the whole problem by themselves, and their state isn't big enough to deal with the whole problem by itself. And frankly, for all those Missouri taxpayer dollars that went to Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana and other places, Florida many times, we ought to be sure that those taxpayers now are stepping up to help us in a situation where we really can't deal with this problem all on our own or shouldn't be expected to. So we passed a disaster relief bill yesterday that would do the things that need to be done. I don't know that becomes the final bill that gets passed, but I do know that eventually the federal government's going to have to come up with that much money to deal with the emergency events of this spring, and many of them in our state. The Missouri River at flood stage from the northwest corner of the state all the way to St. Louis for months now, literally for months now, and clearly lots of river damage in southeast Missouri from Poplar Bluff to the Boot Heel, and so, we're working hard to be sure that the federal government steps in. I'm also asking for a GAO study to look at what we've been doing on disasters over the last several years. My guess is that one of the reasons we're running out of money now every year by the time we get to the real disaster time of the year is that it's become almost a routine request from governors or to say to the president, well, we had this problem, we need to declare a federal disaster. And I'm wondering how big these problems are compared to the things we thought were federal disasters 10 or 20 years ago. And we need to be looking at that and being sure that we're not jumping in when communities and states could solve these problems on their own, only to wind up annually running out of money for about the time we get to hurricane season.
So you passed the $6.9 billion in disaster aid yesterday in the Senate. Now it goes over to the House, but a little apprehension, it's probably not going to pass the House, though, with the way it looks right now.
It will eventually, I think, guys, pass the House, but it's going to take 2 or 3 probably different bills to get that done. They'll pass part of it next week in the money that will last through late October or early November, since nobody's passed any appropriations bills yet, for the spending year that begins October 1, 2 weeks from today, or 2 weeks from tomorrow, and so they'll pass this continuing, how the government continues, and it'll include some of this, the normal appropriations process that should be going on right now. Could include the bills we passed out of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate a week ago included $5.1 billion of that $6.9. Now, I was in favor of just going ahead and taking that out of the regular bills and just getting it done so the money was out there. But I'm also going to be in favor of doing it in a less helpful way, but a way to get it done, which will be some of it here, some of it there. By the end of the year, I think that all $6.9 billion of that money will be made available to deal with these emergencies.
We're speaking with Missouri Senator Roy Blunt at this hour on the KZRG Morning News Watch. KZRG News time is 7:44. And Senator, we know that you were in attendance listening to the President's jobs bill. What's been your reaction to that? Is it good? Is it bad? Is there anything good about it?
Yeah, there's nothing new there, and there's nothing particularly good there, I don't think. I'm sure there are a few things in that package that if you pick them out and do them separately, encouraging veterans hiring, whatever positive things might have been said about having a simpler tax code so we could compete better in the international competitive marketplace. Those are good, but I don't think the president was serious about getting this done. If he was serious about getting it done, he would have brought everybody together before the speech and after the speech. And as I understand it, the Speaker of the House and the President still have not discussed this proposal. Mm-hmm. So this is a political exercise. It's more of the same thing that was the failed stimulus. It's sort of the sequel to the stimulus plan. And I think this is the sequel that nobody's going to produce because the stimulus was such a flop.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know that's been a pretty common reaction in this corner of Missouri in the four-state region. I guess, the question, looking at the President Jobs Plan, looking at attempts he's made in the past, what do you think about the President's record as far as creating jobs?
Well, he's not creating jobs. There was zero job creation in the month of August. It takes about 10,000 jobs a month just to stay even with a growing population. And we had zero job creation. And one of the few times ever in the recent history of the country we haven't created any net new jobs. Now, sometimes there's an increase in unemployment even with new jobs because you have, again, about 10,000 new workers entering the workforce every month. But the president's plan failed. I mean, he said if his stimulus passed that I voted against, $800 billion, that would keep unemployment below 8%. Well, unemployment's not been below 8% since a few months after that stimulus bill passed, and it's over 9% now. And why the president wants to double down on these failed policies, why he wants to take money from the Social Security, have people stop paying into the Social Security fund when Social Security needs to be fixed, not made worse, is astounding to me.
Speaking with Senator Roy Blunt on the KZRG Morning News Watch this morning. And, Senator, I guess the question now is, what are your efforts in the Senate at this point? I mean, obviously, making big moves to pass the FEMA bill and also now dealing with the President Jobs Plan. What are going to be your efforts in this period?
Well, I'd like to see the regular process of how we appropriate money work for the first time in 3 years or so. The Senate, which I'm in the minority and I'm not in the majority, so I don't have a lot to say about the schedule of the Senate. But the Senate hasn't passed the annually required budget for 900 days now. 900 days since we passed the budget. We're supposed to pass every 365 days, and by the middle of April every year. The Senate isn't doing its work. Without a budget, you can't appropriate. But now that we have this agreement on the debt ceiling agreement, gave us a number to appropriate to, a maximum spending number for this year and next year, and hopefully the Senate will do its real work. Rural communities, agricultural families, all those things are impacted by the Senate appropriations bill that I'm now the top Republican on, the Ag and FDA and Rural Development bill. I'd like to see that bill get passed, and let's find out where we can save money, but let's also tell America's farm producers and regulators of that production what the rules are going to be so they can get out there and get their job done. These trade bills will be a benefit to Missouri. I know not everybody believes that, but our exports have grown in the past decade as a state 3 times as fast as the rest of the state's economy. So we're competitive if we're allowed to have access to the marketplaces in the world. And the pork producers, the beef producers, the grain farmers, the manufacturers know that Colombia, Panama, and Korea mean more Missouri jobs. All of their products come in here pretty much duty-free already. And it's time that we had the same access to their markets.
KZRG News Time, 7:49. Senator Blunt, we appreciate your time this morning. By
the way, one other thing, you're going to have some people just like me who say, well, if we're going to pay for these disasters, we should find places to cut spending to pay for them, and I'm for that. I voted for spending cuts yesterday that weren't added to the bill, but it's not just disasters that we're not paying for. We're not at a balanced budget yet, so any program you like, we're also not paying for. And we need to find every spending cut we can and use every reason we can to find them. And it's fine with me if disaster spending becomes another excuse to say, okay, what can we stop doing that we're not doing very well? And yesterday I voted for $7 billion of cuts to make in the other federal budget to pay for this 6.9. And I'm prepared to look at every single spending item and see where we can find savings that get us closer to a balanced budget quicker.
Senator, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much.